Hey there, rock and roll podcast fans. This is Mike Hoban. Welcome to Rat Tales, the podcast that brings you the music and stories of the Boston rock scene that grew out of the mid-'70s at the Rat and some of the other hellhole joints, each with their own sick charm.
I can't find the time to tell you. I can't find the time to tell you.
That was Can't Find the Time to Tell You by Orpheus, their biggest hit, written by our guest today, Bruce Arnold, on the Boston Beat. Thanks for being here. How are things there in California?
Well, things are great in California. It's goes between being 85 and down to 75 during the day, so that's pretty easy to take. I think that's what sold me. I came out for 6 weeks from Barre, Massachusetts, and when I got out here, I said, why in the world didn't I know about this? So I just decided to stay. We have the 90-degree days, but it's not humid at all, so it's different, yeah.
When did you first get interested in music?
There was always a lot of music in our home, so we were constantly listening to the radio, and my father particularly liked Van Cliburn, and he liked Lieberstrom, and he liked the Mills Brothers and the Ames Brothers, and so there was a lot of music happening, and we were listening to it all the time. And then two things happened. One was my great uncle gave me his cornet, and so I was grateful for that, and I tried to play that. And at the same time, because of that, my brother was given a guitar. So he had a guitar, and he was going to learn that. And one of those F-hole guitars, blonde finish by Kay. And so we each had these instruments, and finally I noticed he wasn't playing his anymore. And I was getting tired of the cornet, which is not a trumpet nor a flugelhorn. It's in between. And I picked up the guitar. And immediately I felt like, yeah, this is more like it. And I remember I actually wanted an electric guitar so bad that I drilled a hole in it in the bottom where I saw chords coming out of guitars, and I would play. I took an extension cord and I cut off one end, and I stuck one end into the wall and the other end into the drilled hole of the guitar, and I would pretend I had an electric guitar until the day I snipped off a little more of the cord while it was plugged in. And that is not a good experience, I can tell you. So anyway, that was my beginning with the guitar, and I just kept it up. My father was very encouraging of all of our pursuits, and I think he would very much like to have, sons who were in music. And I know his brother was a musician, and there was a lot of music in his family when he was growing up. So there we were, and then I just started developing, learning how to play by listening to records. I didn't have any lessons or anything, and just went from there. And after you do that for 50, 60 years, you get pretty proficient at it.
What was your first band?
Well, the first band that we had a name for was the Grove Singers. Prior to the Grove Singers, though, Roger Saloom, well-known Worcester musician, and I did a couple of things together for the Park and Recreations department in Worcester, and we would go and play at different things for little kids. And I remember singing Old MacDonald Had a Farm and so on for a bunch of little kids, and they really loved it. And so that was Roger and Bruce. Roger went on to be Roger Saloom and the Mother Bear, a really good band. And now, of course, Roger has a great documentary out about him that's all over the place called The Best Songwriter You've Never Heard Of. And that's a very good documentary. It's won a lot of awards. That was with Roger, and we were both interested in folk music. Then I met a friend named Dunny Shories, who had a guitar that was electric guitar, and he could play the what is the name of it? It's that guitar song, the Dwayne Eddy song, goes da 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 da. Well, anyway, he could play that. He could play that, and I was impressed. So I hung around with him for a while, and I sort of got that from him. Then the Grove Singers in junior high school, three of us got together, Steve Singer and Ken Backman and myself, and we would emulate the Kingston Trio and the other groups that were happening. We basically play at bar mitzvahs and that kind of thing, but it was fun. And then I met Jack McInnes, and Jack was playing in another group at the time. I can't remember the name of that group, but he had a great voice. We harmonized together, and we both realized we should be singing together. So we both left our groups and formed the Villagers. First it was Jack and Bruce, then it was the Villagers. And that was the core of Orpheus, Jack and I. And then we added Eric Gullickson, and we added drums, Harry Sandler.
What types of places did the Villagers play?
Well, we named ourselves the Villagers because there was a place on Cape Cod called the Villager. And it was a, hall, a dance hall, or whatever you want to call it. And so because the guy loved us so much and we were going to be the house folk music band, we said, well, let's just call ourselves the Villagers, and that'll solve two advertising problems with one. And we would go around, hand out flyers down in Cape Cod and Hyannisport and Provincetown, all over. And then we would also play, back then, folk music was really a precious commodity, and it was pure, and it still is, and it was serious. They were very serious. Everyone's serious about the music. Those were all the things I loved about folk music, and I say I'm still in that world spiritually. That's where I came from, and that's why my songs sound like they do. It's not because I listen to some rock and roll. It was listening to something a little bit more subtle and sublime. Right, it would be the Cape, and then we played at the Loft in Boston, but the Cape was what we wanted to play at, because if you could get a gig and play there all summer, well, then you had you had a vacation all planned. And of course, if all we ever had to do was play songs at night and then do whatever we wanted during the day, I mean, sign me up, and that's what the Cape was all about. So we would stay down there, try to stay down there for the whole summer, and for several years we did that. And that was always a problem because, I was 17 then or something, 16 and a half, maybe 17 and a half, and I was a professional musician, and we were performing professionally and getting well known. Well, I was still in high school at the time, and I would come back from Cape Cod with a beard and long scruffy hair, and they'd stop me before I even came in the door, and they'd say, you can't come in like this. You go back and you shave off that mustache and cut that goatee off. You can't have that. So I'd go home and say, okay, so I'd shave that, because I could always grow it back. Shave it off and everything. I come back in and they go, wait a minute. Those sideburns are a little bit too long. I want them a half an inch shorter. You go home today and you think about that. Okay, so thank you for letting me go home. So I go home, cut them like just, the smallest amount more, finally go in. They couldn't put up with me anymore about it. So what they said was, you just leave school before lunch so no one will see you. So then, for a year or two, I had the grace to dress however I wanted, have long hair, short hair, whatever I wanted to do, because I got out of there. Only the people in my classes would see me, not the whole school, So that was an interesting little way to get out of having to go to classes after lunch.
Were the Villagers doing any original songs at that point?
Yes, as a matter of fact, just a little bit, which is on the second album, was a Villager song.
Don't try. You were wrong when I was gone. Now I'm still the only one, but but in love I know it's not.
Actually, you almost have to say that Can't Find the Time was a Villagers song because we were putting it together as the Villagers. And I don't know if we ever actually played it as the Villagers, but it was definitely came right out of the same stream of thought and stream of consciousness. And then other ones like that are a part of this 100 unreleased things like, actually, So Far Away in Love on the second album was also a Villager song.
So far away in love.
And but a lot of the ones that we have are Villager songs just at the cusp of turning into Orpheus songs, and that was because a wonderful fellow named Bill Wolk, a psychologist in Boston, lived up on Louisburg Square, if you could imagine now living up there. But he had a nice little place on Louisburg Square and also had a beautiful tape machine, reel-to-reel deck, a professional tape deck. And he wanted to use it, and he loved the Villagers, and so he would come and make recording after recording, perfect recordings that today, if you listen to, you just go, that could have been done yesterday. He was so meticulous about it.
I can't help but wonder where I'm bound, can't help but wonder where I'm bound.
And so all of those exist, and I'm in touch with Dr. Wolf again, and we have all those ready to release. But I didn't write folk songs. That was really the problem. Was we would include these songs in the performances that we do, but for the most part, the people were a little standoffish about it because, I'm adding major seventh chords and things like that I do in Orpheus material, and that wasn't done in folk music. And so it wasn't that they disparaged what we were doing, but we were clearly stretching the envelope. We were making folk music different. And, I would say that the way Donovan made folk music different in a similar fashion. And even The Love and Spoonful, the concept of the folk song in the genre of a good rock band.
So Orpheus formed around 1966?
Let's see. The music began, I began to actually play music around 1964, 65. Come to 1966, the Villagers were quite well known. We had done a number of demos and we were liking what we heard. So, and I always wanted to expand the band into something more than just two people, because I knew there were more harmonies and more things could be done. So that was about 1966 when we considered putting together a band, a rock band. And then for that year, between, say, middle of 1966 and 1967, we went around and we had our demos. We had a demo of Can't Find the Time and several of the other songs. And we took those down to New York City, and lo and behold, we got 9 offers. Everybody who heard it made us an offer, but there wasn't any offer like a 4-album contract with MGM, and that was the one that we chose. And I'm very glad we did, because Alan Lorber was like adding one more member to the group for me. He and I really hit it off, and I really liked his orchestrations, probably because they were based on my guitar parts, but I liked the way he handled the songs. That first album, though, some people have said it was over-orchestrated or whatever. Not to me. That's the way I wanted it. In fact, the great thing about working with Alan was I got to approve everything before it was given to MGM or to the record company. I thought that meant something, but actually it's what happens after it gets to the record company that you got to worry about, because they can change it. It's their property, so they can change it. And they actually did on our second album, which I liked. I liked what we did. And then when it came out, I didn't like it. I said, something's wrong with this. And I realized what it was. They had purposely sped it up So to make us sound less mature, the big thing then was bubblegum music, and we sounded, I sounded pretty mature, and we sounded like we were going after maybe an older audience, which we were, but to get that record airplay, I think they sped up the songs to make them peppier. That was a trick they used to do on radio, where if one radio station would play the song a little faster than the other one, it sounded like a, peppier, fresher kind of sound, and that's some ways they could get people to go over to their radio station from another one by just speeding it up a little bit. So they tried that with our whole album, and that was a disaster right from the start. I did not like the album. Now, however, we have put together an album that's been remastered and remixed without the speeding up. And that's going to be coming out soon. And I'm really, after we did that, and we slowed it all back down to the normal pace and the normal pitch, boy, then I like that record again.
That's amazing how the label could do something like speed up the vocals and not tell the band they did that.
Yeah, and again, we have no say over it. They could just do what they wanted, and they did. And the worst thing about being with a record company that is having problems like MGM was, is that you'd get to. We were sent out to do some gigs in Detroit, and to do a radio interview, and when we got to the radio station, the interviewer got me off to the side, and he said, I really shouldn't be interviewing you guys. And I said, well, why not? And he said, because we only interview people and promote records that are available in the stores. And I said, what are you talking about? Our stuff is not available in the stores? And they said, not in Detroit it isn't. So we said, oh my God. So then he did let us do the interview, however, which was good. But still, if you couldn't buy the record, it was crazy. Well, that was the first inklings we got that MGM was going out of business. They hadn't paid the pressing plant, and the pressing plant refused to give the records to the distributor, who then could not distribute them. And then from then on, it was just one thing after the next until they finally just went bankrupt.
Did that happen more on the second LP or the first LP?
Well, the third album was done, was completed by the time that happened, and they still had control over the third album. But Alan Lorber, the producer, fought them for several years and got the ownership of the masters back. So Alan actually owns them now, and now the problem is he can do whatever he wants with them, speed them up, slow them down, throw them out. I don't know what he'll do, but those masters are now all being published and so on. But I have a treasure trove of over 100 unreleased recordings of Orpheus music, and that will be coming to light over the next couple of years as we release them. But there's a lot more Orpheus than people have heard.
When Orpheus first got together and started playing gigs, was the band playing in the same types of places the Villagers played, or did it expand?
Yeah, well, we sort of, when we were the Villagers, when we were playing in the clubs, they'd let us play whatever we wanted. And we were pretty eclectic because Jack and I were also part of the band, the Glad Dog, Kennebunkport, Mudflat Chicken Stomper Jug Band. So because of the diverse nature, we could stick in a jazzy tune. Like I remember Harry Steele, a good friend of mine, did the Judy Garland song, actually the Noel Coward song that Judy Garland sings called If Love Were All. And that's a very jazzy, beautiful, intimate song. And so he could actually sing that there and have a completely still audience. And then we could come on with a raucous jug band and do something just with kazoos, and we had the whole deal of washed up bass. And in fact, we considered ourselves a good jug band,
How long after the band formed did you get signed to MGM?
Yeah, it was just a few months. Harry wasn't my first choice as a drummer, but he could keep up. That was the big deal is, can you keep up? Yeah, I can keep up. So he was able to keep up. So we used him originally in the beginning, but as soon as I got in the studio, I used Bernard Purdy, who was the studio drummer for many, many good bands, but also he really invented the drum sound for Orpheus, and he still is my drummer today on the new CD, Orpheus Again. He also does all the drumming on that, which that one was a great experience for us because we got to record that at Skywalker Ranch. And we did that over 8 weeks, 21 sessions over 8 weeks. Wow. And I got to bring out everybody I wanted to bring out, including Purdy. And we just had a party for 3 weeks playing music. And the end result was the CD Orpheus Again.
Was the idea to use session people in the recordings yours or Alan Lorber's?
They were Alan's because Alan already has quite a history amongst the studio musicians. He would do commercials, and he actually was responsible for Neil Sedaka and Leslie Gore. Those arrangements that you hear are Alan Lorber in the background. But then he got to getting successful enough that he could do a producer as well as an arranger, and that's when he could choose the groups he wanted to. And he wasn't expecting to find anything like Orpheus when he started. Actually, he came to Boston and let it be known that he was there and he would like to audition groups. And but he thought he was just going to get the same thing. And then when he heard us and he heard Can't Find the Time, he just knew that this was going to be his crown jewel. And I think really out of all of his stuff, the Orpheus albums are Alan Lorber's crown jewels. He put the time into it, and I was even happy. And I'm the fussiest guy, and criticize myself worse than anybody. But I liked it all, so I was glad, very glad.
When the band signed with Alan Lorber, you were aware that he was planning the Bosstown Sound promotion?
No. As soon as they did make us aware of everything. That it was good. They weren't pulling anything over on us, but I think that Alan would have rather separated Orpheus from the Bosstown Sound if he had his druthers. But what had happened was between Lenny Scher, who was the president of MGM at the time, Wes Farrell, who wrote Hang On Sloopy and several other songs, and he was producing the Beacon Street Union, part of the Boston Sound, and then Alan was also producing the Ultimate Spinach. So for Alan, I think he sort of sacrificed Orpheus a little bit in order to spread the glory around and get these other bands popular and get them some exposure too. But I think looking back, it would have been better for us to have just gone alone because we didn't sound like the other bands in the Boston Sound. And in fact, we sort of defined the Boston Sound, and there weren't a lot of bands that sounded like us. So in a way, it was sort of a waste of time.
How did Can't Find the Time come about? I love that song.
That is, occasionally I will sit down and I will try to write a hit. And that means hyperbole, and it means, it hooks, and it means repetitive things, and things that will stick in your mind. And so I think on Can't Find the Time, this was my chance to do it all in one song, to take all the formula and put it all into one song, and so that's the way it came out. And the lyrics are about the girl that I was dating at the time was not too seriously, but was complaining that I wasn't paying enough attention to her, and she would follow around and we'd play at these places and everything, and I would maybe forget that I ought to go and spend some time with her because we had other people who wanted to spend time with us. And so that sort of is where the bittersweetness of the song comes in, where first I talk about, so many things to say, I could fit them in a book, and so many people say I couldn't lie. And then I say, baby, you're wrong. And now you know that what I'm saying is she's wrong about my not, giving her all of my love, and under these conditions, maybe it's difficult, but, you're wrong about that. I really do love you. So that's where the baby, you're wrong came from. And there were other songs like that had those kind of twists. And I know this is a stretch, but Elizabeth Cotten wrote the song, "Oh Babe, It Ain't No Lie." And at first she sings, well, let me get this guitar here. At first she sings, there's an old woman who lives in this town, and she's telling lies about me. How I wish that old woman would die and stop telling lies about me. Then she says, oh babe, it ain't no lie. Oh babe, it ain't no lie. Oh babe, it ain't no lie. This life I'm living's mighty high. And that's the same thing where she says, that woman's telling lies about me, and then right away she says, however, it ain't a lie. And so that little twist I found use for and can't find the time, just the change of, and I'll tell you, many people think that it's something other than Baby You're Wrong, because it seems incongruous. You're telling, what is it, baby your eyes, baby you're on, maybe you're wrong. I heard that, maybe you're wrong once. But, finally when it comes out that it's baby you're wrong, and then I always have to explain it like I did to you, what those lyrics are about.
Here's Can't Find the Time.
I can't find the time to tell you. I can't find the time to tell you.
That was Can't Find the Time, the first single from the Orpheus LP, released in 1968.
Yeah, but that song is, I was thinking about when Hootie and the Blowfish redid it 50 years after it first came out. If you juxtapose that back to, say, 1950, and you said, okay, let's look for a song 50 years old to put out again. You'd be at 1900, you'd be choosing If You Knew Susie Like I Knew Susie, or Strauss March. There's no way to transplant that, but somehow Can't Find the Time could be transported from 50 years prior up to today. And I have people who have heard the Hootie version and have heard us doing it as well, and have never heard it before. They have no idea it's a 50-year-old song. They think maybe we just wrote it.
What'd you think of Hootie and the Blowfish version of that song?
I loved it. I was of course I was anxious about it, because I've heard many, there must be 50 versions of Can't Find the Time on YouTube that people do, and it's a hard song to do. I have to agree, it's not just readily apparent what the chords are and so on. And however, Alan called me about the Hootie thing and said, hey, I was listening and not too impressed until he said, yeah, and also Hootie and the Blowfish is doing the movie, and I said, in a movie, and I said, Hootie and the Blowfish in a movie. Okay, now I'm excited. So then he sent me a copy of it, and we had several of my family members around, so we went into my studio, turned it way up, and I was glad I turned it way up, because it was great. It was something I really, really got behind. I loved the way he sang it. I loved the things he added to it. I loved their arrangement of it. It's different, but really good. And then the best thing of all about it was they asked me to play it with them every time they came to California. So I played with them in the House of Blues in L.A., at the Fillmore, at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco and Reno. And it's great for me because Darius sings the first verse and then I sing the second verse, and it just works. It works, and we have a whole catharsis about playing Can't Find the Time together. So everything about that has been just great, just wonderful. And I'm glad that it wasn't some mania, because I wouldn't have liked all the attention and the publicity and all that stuff. It's just not up my alley at all. So I like it that I have few but very intense fans.
What movie was the song featured in?
That's the Jim Carrey movie, Me, Myself, and Irene. And it's getting a lot of play on TV now, and I get the royalties for that, and I can tell you every time they play it, I get 16 cents.
That's
so
great.
Yeah, so
Well, that's up.
Sure, it adds up. It adds up. Before you know, you got $1.60. The Farrelly brothers told me that they have always wanted to put Can't Find the Time in a movie. The Farrelly brothers are the producers of Something About Mary and several of the other popular movies of the day. And they told me that they're from Rhode Island, so they heard Can't Find the Time growing up, and they always wanted to find a place to put that song in. And to their great surprise, they had this opportunity to do this whole album of cover songs. And one of the Farrellys thought, you know what? Hootie and the Blowfish could cover Can't Find the Time. They were going to use our original version, but then they said, let's do cover versions of everything we were going to use. So they were going to use Steely Dan and Us, and they ended up doing cover versions of Steely Dan and Us. And so that was great. And he said that, in fact, it's the only song in the movie that's played all the way through. Most songs are just played a little bit and then it goes off into something else. But he said that we started it at a certain point in the scene, and it just miraculously, when the scene was over, that's when the song was over. And so we left the whole song in just like it was. And so that's great, too, for me, because many, many people, probably more people now have heard Can't Find the Time. Millions have heard it through the audiences who would go to the theater, and now the audience is on TV. So it really shows a lot of airplay, as it were, for the song, and probably the best thing that happened to it.
Was it anything else?
No, as a matter of fact, that's the first film that Can't Find the Time was in. Now, we did this theme song for a 1970 film called Marlowe with James Garner, and it's on my Facebook site, a copy of the song, and Jack sings it. It's called Little Sister, and I wasn't crazy about the song, so I was happy that Jack would wanted to do the lead on it. But it was very much like a movie, a Shirley Bassey kind of thing, It's very much movie music, and we were just presented with the completely recorded track and asked to sing over it, and that's what we did, and that's okay with me, because that's happened a couple of times before.
His Little Sister.
Ooh, little sister, I don't know what you're thinking. Little sister, don't know what's on your mind.
That was Little Sister from Orpheus, featured in the film Marlowe, starring James Garner. What was the response to Can't Find the Time when it was released?
Well, remember I told you about records not being available? They weren't in the stores. Well, nobody was going to play the record if it wasn't in the stores, but all the radio stations loved the record. And where it was in the stores, it became #1. And that's all up and down New England, down into Maryland, down into Philadelphia. It was even #1 in Bakersfield, California. For some reason they could buy it out there. Who knows? But anyway, and it was #1 in Hawaii too. And that just really made what I think was the story of how, no matter how good your music is, or no matter whether you've written songs that are supposed to be hit songs or not, things can still get jiggered and turned upside down at the last minute or any time along the way, you know. So the fact that we had the success that we did and the interest that we still have, it just never ceases to amaze me, you know. And I'm so happy about it that I'm glad people like the music. That's all. Our only agenda was, you know, hoping that you would enjoy what you were going to hear, you know.
The record and all those songs had a really timeless feel.
Yes, hopefully that's the idea. I was a little worried in the beginning that the phrase "ba da 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 da" was a bit of a dating, you know, sounds like the Mamas and Papas or something like that. But I've come to appreciate it in a different way, and that is that it can be sung in any language. So, you know, to me it might sound something like a dated thing I wrote 50 years ago, but to a lot of people it sounds like a new kind of way to sing, you know. So they don't relate it back that far, you know. So in that sense, it has the kind of first of all, love doesn't go out of style. So if it's pretty and it's got verses that mean something to somebody, people always tell me, I look at your pretty face and I fall in love with you every time I see you, that is the verse that sells them on the song. That's the lover's verse. Every lover wants to hear that, you know. So that really is, that's why it's timeless. The ideas are always timely.
I look at your pretty face and I fall in love with you every time I see you, yeah. Light gowns of regal lace that are flowing to the ground in a mist around you. Baby, you're right. Baby, you're right. Baby, you're right. Baby, you're right. Da, 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 da. I can't find the time to tell you. Da, 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 da. I can't find the time to tell you.
Occasionally, if we were playing in an area where there was a local TV place, we would be whisked into the TV studio, and there are a couple of those kind of videos on YouTube where we are indeed just brought in and lip syncing Can't Find the Time. And Can't Find the Time because of this idea that it, you know, Alan Lorber always said that song is yet to have its day because of how screwed up it was. And so he watched it, you know, go first become a hit over here, and then by the time that it was 3 weeks later, it was suddenly starting somewhere else in the country, and then starting somewhere else after that was through. And he just saw that as really a terrible way to release a record. So what he did to try to counter the original release of all different months that it came out in different areas was he released it 3 more times. Can't Find the Time was released in 1971. That's 4 years after it was originally recorded, like it was a new song, because where he was sending it, they hadn't heard it because they never got the records and the radio stations didn't play it. So that's what he did. He released it once in 67, once in 69, and once in 71.
Was the response different each time?
It was different each time, but you see, if it releasing a record and it drops at different places and different times is, they can't chart nationally then. It can chart regionally, but it can't chart nationally because it didn't happen at the same time. All the sales have to happen at once for it to be on Billboard up high. And what we did was we were an album that stayed on for 16 weeks instead of one big smash. We stayed on 16 weeks, but it wasn't good enough to get all the sales at the same time to kick it up the Billboard chart.
So poor distribution is why it didn't chart higher nationally?
Right, that's right. Well, I was fussy, I have to admit. I didn't want to play clubs, especially. And I didn't want to play dances, but in the beginning I knew we had to play dances and we had to do some clubs. But as soon as Can't Find the Time got on the radio, then I started getting fussy. And what I wanted to do was sit down concerts at colleges. So that's what our agency did. They lined up all the colleges that wanted to hear us, and that would be all up and down the East Coast and as far west as Chicago. And we would play at those schools, and I would have a blast because it was just like I liked it. In fact, we would even turn on the house lights because I wanted to see everybody out there. I didn't want it to be where a bright light shining on you and it's just dark black behind the light. So, and they would, and the poor people putting on the show, they would come with a light show or something like that and want to do that at the same time as we were playing. And I'm going, no light show. Turn on the house lights, get off the stage, you know, and so we had our way with that for quite a while. And I also did not want to play a long time. I wanted to do one 70-minute set. Bands were playing like 2-hour sets or something like that, and I'm going, no, I don't want. That's too long to play. I want to play just enough to make them want to hear more, and then I want to leave. And so we figured a 70-minute set was exactly that right amount. Because you start playing 3 hours, yeah, they might all sit down there and enjoy it, but you know, I would sit and I love Ali Akbar Khan and I love North Indian classical music, but I can't sit there for 3 hours and listen to a raga. You know, I've got to get up and do something else, you know, but some people can.
What groups did you open up for?
Sure, we when we first started playing with The Who and Cream and so on and Led Zeppelin, we had equal billing because actually Can't Find the Time was bigger than the Cream song in the area or the Led Zeppelin. So we were right up there, 2 equal billings. And then when Cream took off and when, you know, that kind of music became really popular, then we might have been pushed to the opening band. It was the other way around. We started off equal, but then might have been slipped down underneath. If they would like us to play with them often, like the Who loved us to play with them. And so that worked. We did several gigs with them, and it just turned out to be great. But some other bands, I remember we played with, we opened for Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And Al Cooper, as we were singing, I looked over to stage right, and I saw Al Cooper gesticulating to someone standing there and raising his hands and making a fuss. And so we just kept playing, and we had a great response, huge response, and everybody loved it. And so I went back, and then I finally said to my manager, I said, what was that story with Al Cooper standing off stage and you know, getting all emotional about something? And he said, he never wants you to open for their band again. And I said, okay, that's fine, we won't.
So Orpheus technically blew them off the stage.
That was fun to do, those kind of things, you know.
What was the reaction to the second 45? I've never seen love like this.
Well, you know, when I submitted the songs for the first album, I submitted what I considered were 5 singles. One was Can't Find the Time. The other one was I've Never Seen Love Like This. The other one was I'll Stay With You. And the third one was fourth one was Congress Alley. And I can't remember what the fourth one was. But I saw those as coming out hits one after the next, as it were, like the Beatles were doing. That was my, Beatles had 2 or 3 hits from one album. I thought that's what we need to do, have so many good songs on the album that they each become a single. And that did work, and people loved I've Never Seen Love Like This. There's something about Can't Find the Time that it couldn't overcome. Never Seen Love Like This, as much as it's got similarities. For instance, let me show you. Ba da 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 da, and then if you go, I've never seen love like this. So it's Can't Find the Time, jazzed up a half step, and faster, with a few other changes. And the reason that happened was because Wes Sparrow, before we signed with Alan Lorber, the other producer that turned out to be in the Bosstown Sound was Wes Farrell, and he also auditioned us before Alan did. And he said to me as we were leaving, go home and write another song like Can't Find the Time and come back and see me. So I went home and I wrote I've Never Seen Love Like This, but Alan got to us before we could take it back to Wes Farrell, and we signed with Alan.
Here's I've Never Seen Love Like This.
Hey, 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 I've never seen love like this. I never knew no love like this. Yeah. I've never seen love like this. I never knew no love like this. Yeah.
That was I've Never Seen Love Like This, the second 45 from the Orpheus album.
And I also thought I'll Stay With You would have been a little more like Can't Find the Time in that it was slower and it was more of a ballad. And I think part of the appeal of Can't Find the Time is the ballad nature of it.
I'll stay with you. I'll stay with you.
Were you aware of the other Bosstown Sound bands, and what did you think of them?
Well, I thought that I saw what people liked in them, and of course, we did play with them on and off, so I got to see them play live, and I got to see them know them backstage and get to know them a little bit. So I definitely had respect for them. I think that they had a hard time because more so than we did, because I don't know if you remember that Rolling Stone magazine came out with a story about the Bosstown Sound, calling it hype, and actually telling it exactly like it was. Big bunch of money, get it together with bands that don't sound like any, cohesive unity, and call it something like they do in Motown, and let's go, That's really what it was. And so that hurt Beacon Street Union, and it hurt Ultimate Spinach, because it was like the cool newspaper saying, you guys aren't cool. You guys aren't cool enough. But for us, we didn't care about the Rolling Stone magazine, and we were going a whole different direction musically, and that's the direction I wanted to keep going. And the praise that I was getting was not from Rolling Stone magazine, but was from, most recently I found out Miles Davis. Miles Davis was a big Orpheus fan, and his wife at the time, Betty Mabry, said in a radio interview that he played Can't Find the Time obsessively and loved the first Orpheus album. And she said it was one of his guilty secrets, the first Orpheus album. So if I'm getting, my nachas and my kudos from Miles Davis, I can take what Rolling Stone magazine says, So that's the idea. We were, the other great thing about having Alan Lorber was his uncle was the first violinist of the New York Philharmonic. So everything you hear on our records is moonlighting Philharmonic players, the best in the country, and they are playing on our records.
There was a stylistic change from the first album to the second one. What brought that change about?
Right. Yeah, and I think here's the difference. It took me 20 years to write the first album, and then they wanted the second album in 3 weeks. See? So that definitely is going to cut down on your ability to, when I record something, I listen to it over and over and over again to hear what's wrong with it, not because I love to hear it, but to hear what's wrong with it, see what I should improve if I need to record it again. And that's where I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed and I actually, I'm not so sure I wouldn't be doing exactly what I'm doing if nobody ever heard me or if I didn't have any hit records. I like playing guitar, I like singing, I like writing music, and that's what I'd be doing anyway. And it's just great now that there's this affirmation, after so many years that we actually had the kind of impact I was hoping on some people.
You met and played with Brad Delp. What was that like?
Yeah, well, Brad was like Donald Fagen and the guys from Steely Dan. They were 13-year-olds in the audience when we were playing around in Boston. And Tom Scholz, same way. Tom Scholz told me that he said, I could never figure out how you got such big guitar sounds. And he said, I still can't figure it out. So we had a lot of people listening and analyzing what we were doing. And amongst those people was Brad Delp. And when Brad got together with Tom Scholz and they had a hit with More Than a Feeling and so on, my brother Lester, who has always been my protector and inspiration, he went to a Boston concert one night and went backstage, and Brad Delp came up to him and said, you're Bruce Arnold's brother, right? And he said, yes. He said, well, I got to tell you, I just love Orpheus, and I love Can't Find the Time. The first album was like the Beatles to me. And he said, I just think it's really great. I would love to meet your brother if he ever comes back. So he called me, and he said, Brad really likes your stuff. And I said, well, that's great. I'd be happy to accommodate him if he wants to do anything with us. And then I got a call from Brad and Jimmy Mazdia, who was a drummer for them, and they said I was invited to play at the Boston Music Awards in 1988. And so I said, hey, that's great. And they both said, we'll sing and play with you, so you'll have a band. And I said, fantastic. And we got Bernard Purdy again, who I always get. And I got Howie Hirsch, who's my favorite bass player in all the world and also a genius musician. And we got together and we practiced Can't Find the Time and the song Love Bite, which I wrote specifically for the Boston Music Awards. And, had very little trouble doing it, put it together, and those actually on Orpheus again, Can't Find the Time and Love Bite are tapes of the rehearsals for the Boston Music Award, and they just came out so good, we just released them just like they were.
Not saying that I want it, I'm saying that I need to love right. And you know how to feed it, you can make me plead for a love bite. Love bite.
And so that's when Brad first sang with me. First we did it on the rehearsals, and he came up with these great harmonies, and then we were able to do the same thing live. And there was actually a recording of the Boston Music Awards, and we're trying to track that down. And I remember seeing it, and I remember approving of it and saying that was a really good performance. So we are trying to find that again, and then we'll have Brad and Purdy and Elliot Sherman I got from Worcester to come and play on that, and that was a fun night at the Music Awards for sure.
How did Congress Alley come about?
The song or the alley? The alley was first, and then the song. Well, the song. You remember I told you that Steve really was banging his head on the kitchen floor while his sister just stood and stared. Well, yes, he was also looking out his kitchen window on Congress Street, Congress Alley, which Congress Street backs up to Congress Alley. And he saw the kids playing, and he saw the sun was shining, and he wrote about it in his inimitable way. Think about it. How many people have you known that could craft a song like Congress Alley, a pop song like he was a veteran songwriter? And he wasn't. He was just a guy sitting around like me, just fooling around. And Congress Alley is a fantastic song, and it should have been a big hit. That was another one that should have been a single and probably would have had a lot of play.
Here's Congress Alley.
The sun is shining, the sun is shining, it knows how to shine out on Congress Alley. What a fine day for the sun to be shining on Congress Alley. Ah, hey, what a trippy day, what do you say
Congress Alley, the B-side to I've Never Seen Love Like This, written by Steve Martin and one of the highlights of the first Orpheus albums.
Anyway, Steve began, as he and I began to realize we both liked music. Like I say, we went to school together, junior high, and I began to listen to him. I began to think, hey, this guy's really got something. It's really something special about the way he writes and the concepts like the sun is a big green pearl and these other ideas of his just intrigued me because I was writing unusual music and I wanted the lyrics to also be unusual or to at least be poetically good. And so Steve began to present that to me. It's like he's the poet. And he gives me this rough poem, and then I can take that and, his version of it in his imagination is probably like what I do, but he can't actually do that. So he's farmed it out, cleverly farmed it out to someone who could create his vision. And I was just happy to take that. And I loved all of his songs. Some people talk about the doorknob song. The lyrical concepts are beautiful.
Are the heroes and the villains at your house too? Can you see how they are godlike?
And does he still do it today? I ask him all the time. I say, we got any more new Orpheus songs? And he hems and haws and says, yeah, I got through. I'll send them out to you. But I really don't get them. He doesn't send them out to me. So in a way, maybe that was a very, very special time, and it might not happen again. I'm surprised that Orpheus again came out as good as it did, and that it was something I liked, because who knows? I'm 67, and a lot of guys my age have lost their voice or can't play anymore. They got arthritis or something. So, and of course, not burning myself out, not staying at the parties after the concerts and things. I think I didn't spend my life before its time.
The direction changed from the first LP to the second?
Interestingly enough, one of the changes in direction was one that we did not intend, and that was a technical change in that record. I wasn't happy with that record for a long time, and for some reason it just didn't sound like I wanted it to sound. And then one day, with my son, he was fooling around with one of the songs on that second album, and he was playing the chords to it, and he said, you said you played this in A, but actually it's A capoed up 1. And I said, no, it's not, it's in A. And he said, no, listen. And he played an A capoed up 1, and sure enough, then we discovered what happened. They sped the record up. That was a policy amongst, well, it was actually not a policy, but it was sort of a tricky little bit that DJs would do to make their records sound a little fresher and peppier than the neighbor's channel. They would speed theirs up a little bit so that their version of Tommy James or whoever sounded a little poppier, and that's what, of course, they were looking for. And I think somewhere between the time when I approved that second album and the time MGM released it, it was taken back into the studio and manipulated. And the question is why? Well, one, I just mentioned, it was, if someone was really thought they were clever, they might say, well, let's do it for the DJ. We'll speed it up for the DJ. But of course, that's ridiculous, because everybody has to speed it up copy. So all it could have meant, and what we were figuring out, was that we were starting to compete with a new kind of music called bubblegum. And we sounded pretty mature. In fact, I think you know, some of the record company executives, when they thought of a new rock and roll band, they were thinking of young voices, and I think we sort of surprised them, me being a baritone, and then Jack and I being more mature maybe than many of our associates at the time. And I think they thought, well, we can make them sound younger by speeding this record up. So that's what they did, and it's a half step high and consequently that much faster. So I never liked it, and then we took the CD and we reprocessed it and slowed it down to the proper speed. Now I love the CD. Now it's exactly what I wanted it to be. I don't sound like a tenor. You know, Jack doesn't sound like Donald Duck and too high of a register. And the beats that I was trying to accomplish, I didn't want these you know, straight ahead beats. I wanted sort of loping, you know, little fat back loping kind of a beat. And by speeding it up, you remove the essence of that entirely, and they became a different thing. So, long story is that now I love the CD. I love the album, and there are many things on it that were a change in direction otherwise. And you're right about that. Let me say that I had 21 years to write the first album, but I had 3 weeks to write the second album. They wanted an album right away. So, and that was legitimate. I mean, we were on the road, and you know, I wrote several of the songs sitting in hotel rooms on tour, and knowing we had to have something. And that's when you started seeing also, because we wanted to fill it up a little bit on that second album, was we started doing some covers, like Walk Away Renee and She's Not There. And those were songs Jack and I really liked and we liked to play. And so we thought, well, and we also did them live. So we said, well, why not put them on record as well? So that was sort of fun to do that. And then also, Mine's Yours. You know, in a way, I've often thought that was probably my best song. And then I recently wrote Playground, and so now I sort of like Playground better than that.
Mine's yours, all yours.
And I also liked Never in My Life. Those were sort of my songs that I felt were me working at the pinnacle of my songwriting, you know.
Never in my life have I seen such a girl. My heart will sing as I'm entering into her parade. Her parade.
How did the I'll Fly single come about?
That was the song I wrote. You know, when I would submit songs to MGM, I would submit songs that I said, these are singles, and then, you know, this would be good on the album. And so a number of songs I considered to be single material, and that was Never Seen Love Like This, Can't Find the Time, I'll Stay With You, and then I'll Fly, and some other ones that we thought could be good follow-ups to some of the other songs that we were doing. So, and Jack at the time really was not getting featured as well as he could be. And so when I wrote I'll Fly, I wrote that with Jack in mind. It's in his key, and I just do a short part of backup singing to his. But you should hear that knocked back to the correct speed. In fact, if you go to my Facebook page and search Backaways, you will see there is a link to that song, and it's been corrected speed and sounds fantastic. And Jack sounds much, much better down at his low register. He had a really great low register.
That was I'll Fly, the first single from the third album, Ascending, released in 1968. Is the untampered version available now anywhere?
No. However, I'm working on one. I'm working on a sort of songwriter's edition where I can, in fact, I've often thought that on all the albums, I would like to have a side track of my commentary so that you could listen to the record, and then you could also, if you wanted to, you could hear me and what my comments about each song and what different elements of the song. So we're talking about doing that.
Was the response to the second album as good as the response to the first one?
Let's see. The answer to that question is yes. People didn't notice my problem with it. They didn't think it was too sped up or that we were singing too high, fast or high. So they liked it just based on what was released. And yeah, we had a lot of people who liked it. I think one of the reasons why it was different was because we did think about the second album a little bit differently, and we also thought that we had to that on this one I didn't need to fill it full of hits. Back in those days, you would just have like one hit maybe from an album if you were lucky. The Beatles came along and you'd get 3 or 4 hits from an album, but you'd have maybe 1 or 2 from an album, and the rest of the music would be album cuts, which I never felt like that's what I was doing with my music, but I did have that concept because I thought I can write for the rest of the album, I can write something less commercial. I can write something that is more artistic, more creative, and I don't have to think about it being a hit, like The Dream or some of these other songs that aren't necessarily going to be, pop hits.
What was it like recording the third album, Ascending?
Yeah, the third album. That was also an album on the run. We were definitely, the idea was to do 3 albums for MGM in 1 year, which is, back then when you think about it, that was common, but now 1 album a year is generally what people are dealing with. And now I understand that they don't even do albums anymore. It's just a single after a single after a single after a single after a single, and then you can buy the best of later, So it's a whole, again, it's all changed. But the third album was, we really cared about that. We had developed some concepts, like for the song Joyful. Couple of songs on there that we particularly did them in a very artistic fashion and painting a picture. We had bells and different things to paint a musical picture, and so that gave us some time to do that. And again, I sort of wanted to dispense with the writing pop hits thing pretty quickly. I knew that was what had got us going, but that was not what I really wanted to be doing in music. I wanted to be doing, I had things like I could think in terms of Broadway, or I can think in terms of movie music and so on. And I was really ready for that and fooled around with those ideas myself. So, trying to just put out more Can't Find the Times was not really on my list of priorities. But I'll tell you something. When I was, I was in Reno with the Hootie and the Blowfish, and Darius and I were talking, and he said to me, Atlantic Records is the worst record company in the world. And I was surprised to hear that because, of course, they were huge, or at least had peaked. And I said, "Oh, really?" And to myself, I thought, well, of course. Why would they be a good record company, you know? So finally, he says, "Yeah." I said, "Well, so what's the problem? They're pressuring you?" And he said, "Yeah, they want me to do more songs like Let Her Cry." And, you know, I knew exactly what he meant because everybody wanted to hear Can't Find the Time. We could have gone to concerts and played Can't Find the Time 10 times in a row, and people would have left going, "That was a great concert." We actually started doing I'll Fly before it was, we started playing the good things, or the things that we liked to play from the second album before it had come out, because we tried them all out live on everybody. So we were playing I'll Fly, and that was mixed in right with our first album material. And then also, I noticed that we did do a couple of concerts, one that I got from Brandeis. We did the concert at Brandeis College, and someone noted in a review of that we didn't do any of the second album songs, even though it had been released, that we were just doing the first album songs. And I think that, barring, you see, I didn't feel like I could sing Mine's Yours live. It would have to shut the whole thing down. It would have to be a spotlight in the middle of the stage. I'd have to be sitting on a stool. And coming from, some raucous version of Don't Be Cruel or something, that didn't seem like those things could juxtapose. It just seemed like asking a lot of the audience to go to this intimate coffee house or nightclub kind of feel, you know. So that was one reason why we had to stay away from some of the songs, but we did do that one I'm still trying to think of. Boy, I wish if I had my CDs around here, I could tell you what it was. But we found that everybody liked the songs, but everybody liked the first songs best. They liked Congress Alley. They liked I've Never Seen Love Like This. They liked Can't Find the Time. And those were the ones we knew were like ear candy, and so we would save those for particular parts of the gig. We only would do a 70-minute performance. You know, that was a time when a lot of people were doing 2 40-minute sets, and I just didn't want to do that. You know, hardly wanted to do the 70-minute set, but we did do a 70-minute set, and we'd do the whole shebang right there. And if they asked us, you know, to do it again, and a couple of times the next band didn't show up, and they asked us to play again, and I said, well, I have to just play the same show again then for you. And they said, I don't care, play the same show. So we did. But, we had a set thing that we did, and because I like to go home and watch TV. Yes, Brown Arms in Houston was really turned out to be, I thought, a great song. When songs were presented to us, by the third album, people were presenting us, good songwriters were presenting us songs and asking us if we liked them and so on, and would we do them. One of those was By the Size of My Shoes, and another one was Brown Arms in Houston. And Joe Henry, who wrote a lot of hit songs during that time, wrote it in combination with Alan Lorber's wife, Leslie Miller. She wrote the music and he wrote the lyrics. And they presented it to me as you hear it. That is to say, the orchestration, everything was complete. I didn't play a note on it. Nobody from the band played on that at all. They brought me this thing. I thought it was gorgeous from the first minute I heard it. And I said, yes, I'll sing it. And I sang to their beautiful arrangement of it, which they had done for me, hoping that I would do exactly what I said. Yeah, I'll do that song. And I was very happy with the results of that song. And when I hear it today, it doesn't sound dated. It doesn't sound in any way superficial. It's the same good song about, you know, people and their their relationships that it was 40 years ago. And also, if you notice, Brown Arms in Houston also stops and starts, and these were things that weren't happening in the music world back then. We were the innovators in trying to, we weren't doing it like the Fifth Dimension was doing it. We were doing it like five guys who were trying to make art.
Here's Brown Arms in Houston.
Brown arms in Houston that called after me. Soft words in Georgia that rose from the sea.
That was Brown Arms in Houston, a single from Orpheus' second LP, Joyful, released in 1968.
Writing pop songs, I mean, I really do think that there's music, there's the music of the spheres, that if you can capture a little of those hooks and a little of those, special chords and things, that there's a lot more good music to be received and to be produced. And I'm waiting for that. I think we're in a dry spell right now. I don't see a leading force of music. It seems to be very much fragmentized by the internet, and now you can be Elvis Presley in your own little group and no one else has heard of you, so there's a lot of that, and I don't think it'll ever be the same. I don't think there'll ever be a Beatles that would it might sweep all of those areas, but it's possible. But like things like U2, they were big, but they didn't have the Beatles sweep of everybody, where your mother and your grandmother liked the music as well. That kind of thing hasn't happened for a long time. Yeah, and then it all began to dissolve, because by the time the Yardbirds came around and so on, people didn't know anybody, and anyway, that wasn't, it wasn't being that. John and Paul weren't really being sold as songwriters. That was coincidental to their fame. It was like, hey, and they wrote the songs too, but in actuality they saw themselves as composers and songwriters, and the other thing was ancillary, going around and being a pop star.
The band still has a lot of fans. Any interesting stories from them?
A lot of people have shared similar things with me. They would say that that the Beatles came out, and then we sort of were an overlay to them of the Beatles, and how you could maybe be an American Beatles, and
right, yeah.
And I think that's true. There was definitely a connection to the singer-songwriter aspect of it, and we were Beatlesque to the degree that we really liked the Beatles. There was no question we liked the Beatles.
After Ascending was released, there were personnel changes in the group. How did that come about?
Well, let's see. Where I should go with that was, I would say that about the second year of playing with Orpheus around the country and performing and so on and recording with them, I really had to find some musical interest outside of Orpheus to keep me creatively inspired. It wasn't going to come from playing Can't Find the Time over and over again. It was going to come from doing something different, exposing myself to a different environment or atmosphere. So I was getting the picture that I was not going to be able to take the boys with me on this new journey I was going on. And by the boys, I meant Harry, Jack, and possibly Eric. And so during the last year of Orpheus, I was actually playing with the band that replaced Orpheus. And the name of our band was the 2 Foot Lamb Door. And we played all around Massachusetts. People didn't know I was in it. It was Steve Martin and myself. People didn't know who Steve Martin was, even though Congress Alley was a huge song and so on. And so we would do these little concerts, like at Amherst. We did a concert where we got one of the halls out there, and everybody came, and that's recorded, by the way. And so Steve and I and a couple of other musicians, Eric and not Howie yet, but we had other good drummer and bass player, and we would do this experimental music, and we loved it, and everything was loosey-goosey, the absolute opposite of Orpheus, which was very regimented, 70 minutes, it's going to be like this, and that's it. These things did go on for a couple of hours. We played all sorts of different kinds of things. People really liked it. And so then, when it came time that the next album was going to be made, and we were going to go forward. I was going to move forward with the band and the music and everything. Just about that time, we also had one of the guys was having a personal crisis, and he started showing up either late or not showing up for performances or rehearsals, and one thing after the next began to happen with him. And so I thought, this is it. This is what's going to happen. It's actually just these people are just going to fall away. I'm not going to have to fire anybody or anything. You know, he's just going to go, I can't play anymore, and the other guy's going to maybe do something else, and some new wonderful thing will emerge from all of that, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to move forward. And so, of course, I had introduced more Steve Martin songs into Orpheus. Orpheus, the first Orpheus, originally did Big Green Pearl live. We had our own arrangement of Big Green Pearl, the first Orpheus, and it's exactly like what I put down on the fourth album. I sang Jack's parts on the fourth album, so that's exactly what we did in the first Orpheus band just before it broke up. I was introducing Steve Martin songs. So then it became, all right, let's do an album. And what do you want to do? And I said, well, what I want to do is I want to do something really thoughtful and not worry about pop music. Just try to create music that was in and of itself intrinsically interesting, like artwork. And so I got to do that because Alan, once I talked to Alan Lorber on the phone, and I said we had these problems with one of the fellows in the band, and he said, well, it's your band, fire him. So I said, well, okay, I will. So in a sense, I didn't have to, because it all, like I said, took place, but I had the authority to change band members if I wanted to. And so ultimately what I wanted to do was change all the band members. And that's when I replaced Eric with Howie Hirsch, and I replaced, there wasn't a rhythm guitar player. Elliot basically replaced Jack, adding the musical aspect. And I would do the singing, and I'd do the singing with myself on the record. I would do all the harmonies myself on the fourth album, except for a few I sang with Steve. And so for me, it was like a wonderful academic exercise. This is exactly what I wanted to try to create. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. And so I think I'll just go to California now. That was it.
That was the fourth album that came out on Bell?
Yeah, that was Elliot Sherman, my childhood friend. When we first met, we had to decide whether we were going to beat each other up or we were going to be fast friends. And we decided, fortunately, on we're going to be fast friends. Yeah. So, and he has been since 14 years old. Steve Martin also, since I was 14 years old, and went to the same junior high as Steve. And he was always just exactly like he is, very creative. And then K.P. Burke, another friend of ours, hanging around. He played the harmonica, and Elliot Sherman, of course, and Howie Hirsch especially was 19 when he did that. He had never played anything, recorded anything, and no one had ever said, come on, be in our band or anything. He never saw himself that way. He was a concert pianist, trained concert pianist. But he loved rock and roll, much to his parents' disdain. And he joined our band at 19 years old, and I was glad he did. He still does all my bass playing. I added to that fourth album Bernard Purdy, who actually played the drums on the first albums too. The first thing that happened when we got in the studio was Alan Lorber explained that he wasn't going to be able to use Harry, and then he introduced us to Bernard Purdy, and that was just the happiest day of my life when I met him, because I knew nothing about drumming up until then. And he sat down and played my songs with such care and thoughtfulness, and it's just never stopped. And we've been very close friends. And Howie too. Howie and Purdy and I have just done all the music. Even this new CD, Orpheus Again, has those guys on it.
The Orpheus LP on Bell Records had a lot of Steve Martin written songs.
Yeah, Steve Martin songs. Well, there was a reason for that, really, because at that time, you know, I wanted to publish my own material. So I wasn't real happy with just handing over another album's worth of songs to my publisher, Alan Lorber, same guy as my producer. And Steve had a bunch of great songs, and he didn't mind giving his songs to the publisher, because what has he got to lose, you know? So we did his songs, and I did write a couple of them with them, like Sweet Life and By the Way and Tomorrow Man.
Here's By the Way.
By the way, did you know I was leaving? Come what may, right away, interweaving.
That was By the Way, written by Bruce Arnold and Steve Martin for the Orpheus LP, released in 1971 on Bell Records.
Those were things we cooperated on, either Steve and I. Steve and I would get together, he would listen to my music, and then he would go away and come up with words for it. Very nice, I liked that idea, and he would bring them back. Often he would take a Bible into a room with him, and then come out with a song that wasn't religious, but somehow the King James or whatever, or something flowery, you know, like, oh yeah, like, do you really have a place on the island, you know, if it please my lady. I mean, where does if it please my lady come from? I mean, that's what he was reading, and that's what he was, so it was, Steve was somebody said they really liked him because he was a subversive songwriter. You know, you had to really dig into his lyrics to figure out, what do you mean banging your head on the kitchen floor? You know, is that figurative? No, that was literal. Yeah, that was true. He was banging his head on the kitchen floor on Congress Alley while your sister, Nancy, his wife's sister, stood and stared at him. That was true. Yeah.
Did all the albums and singles chart high locally?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. We had #1 hits all over New England. #1. It wasn't #5. It was #1 all over. Well, let me say this. Wherever the record was played and they had records to sell, it became #1. Bakersfield, California, it was #1. Honolulu, Hawaii, it was #1. So the big problem with that is, of course, when they're not distributing the records in a timely fashion, you can't, I think we talked about this, you can't get on the national charts. Because if this one happens one week, and this one happens 2 weeks later, and then this one's a month later, you're getting all the airplay, you're being #1, but you're not doing it all at the same time, which keeps you off the national charts as being #1. So that's what happened to us. But I didn't really look at it that way, because I was just pleased that we were #anything. You know, I was just going, hey, whatever, it's just great. Let's keep playing.
That kept happening after each release?
Right, after each record there'd be more airplay. Brown Arms in Houston was big in the Boston area, but as you can imagine, it was huge in Houston. It was huge in Houston. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We had these areas where people received us as like, yeah, this is the great new pop group, and other areas when I got to California, everybody knew my song As Done by Rose-Colored Glass. So, and that I did not like the way they did the song, so I wasn't real happy to go, oh yeah, I wrote that song. But if I had a copy of mine, and then I'd go, yeah, I wrote this song.
It's amazing how the company just couldn't get it right.
Yeah, we gave them everything they needed to do it, but and I saw firsthand how how something that's really a house of cards can fall apart. I mean, when you think about it, the whole record business is, and eventually did fall apart. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It eventually fell down because middlemen, they make a place for themselves. And if they can sneak in between, this guy and that guy and make some money in between, that's a place, that's a job, that's a living, so people will do that. And they've created this big promotional house of cards and said all rock and roll stars are all great like Elvis, and all this is like that, all this is like that. And then, what it came down to was the corruption. I've never gotten one penny. Let me make it even more clear. I have never gotten 1 cent of publishing money from Alan Lorber. That's what the business is like.
You had a contract that stated the band was supposed to get royalties?
I get it. I have a contract that says I should be receiving it, but he's never given me any money. And there were other things that I wasn't aware of, like I found out that 35 years after a song is written, that there's an opportunity for the original songwriter to get back to publishing. And all you had to do was ask. But if you didn't do it within like a 2-year period of time, the original publisher could keep it. Well, no one told me, So there was a time where if I had been advised properly, because at that time a lot of people got their royalties back. Stevie Wonder and several other people used that and got their publishing back.
Orpheus was in the Playboy Jazz Ball?
This is why I knew it was a bubble that we were in, okay? We got the Playboy Jazz poll in 1969 came out, and we were right between the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix. We were number 9, I think. Number 10, maybe. 10. And we were pretty pleased about that. I thought, hey, that's great. Wow, that's cool. And we were congratulating ourselves about it and so on. And I showed the Playboy article to my father, and he kept turning back the pages to the girls. It was very embarrassing when your father would do that. No, Dad, it's over here. See, it says Orpheus. And yeah, but what about this picture here? Well, anyway, he liked that Playboy. And some years later, about 10 years later, I ran into the guy who worked at our promotional place, the guys who were handling our promotion. I can't remember exactly what their name is now. But he ran the Orpheus promotion for the time that, during this period of time, when Playboy chose us to be number 9, number 10. And we were talking about it, and I said, hey, yeah. I said, well, you were around then when we got the Playboy thing, right? And he said, oh, yeah. Don't you know how we did that? And I said, what do you mean, how we did that? What are you talking about? And he said, oh, well, what we did was we went into 1,000 magazine stores in Manhattan. We sent people into them posing as Playboy representatives. They were told that there was a misprint on the ballot in the magazine this month, and the new magazines would have, the next month, would have the new ballots. Sorry for this terrible inconvenience, I know it is. We'll remove the ballots, and you'll be getting your new ballots next year. Thank you very much. And they collected thousands of ballots. They put in Orpheus. They sent those to about 5 areas around the country. From there, they were distributed into the mail and back to Playboy, and lo and behold, we were number 9. So that's what the business is. See, now when you took out when you took those guys out, and now you got the artists selling their own CDs, none of that stuff happens anymore. That's all because of the middleman trying to steal a little more,
If they did that, imagine what other stuff was going on as well.
Yeah, and there are other stories like that are even worse. And the big bands, the real big bands like the Who and so on, they got horror stories. You know, they got people dying in the swimming pool. So you know, there's some pretty terrible things that the music business allowed just for some people to make some money.
Did the band tour after the Bell LP was released?
After the third album, there was a pause. Then we did the Bell album. There was still interest in Orpheus playing live. And, you know, and the guys, the booking agent would come to me and say, you know, it's my job to book you, and here's some bookings for you, you know. And, of course, the rest of the guys in the band were just happy to do them. Oh, play? Yeah, we'll play. But I was always a little reticent about playing anywhere. I had to know it was going to be good for the band, you know. And so at that point, we decided that we would take about 5 of the gigs that we were contracted for. It was a good thing to do because then we wouldn't get sued for not doing them. And they were in the Catskills. I think 3 of the jobs were in the Catskills and 2 of the jobs were somewhere else in New York, Schenectady or something like that. And so Stephen Martin, myself, Elliot Sherman, Timmy Griffin, the drummer, and a bass player, I can't think of who, and the harmonica player, Kevin Burke, would go to these gigs and play our new Orpheus music on the 4th album. And of course, these people, imagine now you go to the Catskills and you are to entertain a group of middle-aged folks who are just there to eat, have a good time, and here can't find the time. And you let Steve Martin start to sing, right? And they start to wonder what happened. In fact, I remember one day when we turned up like that, it got to be about 10 minutes before the show started, and the guy came running in and going, "Where's the band? Where's the band?" And I said, "We're the band." He said, "You're the band? I thought you were the roadies." You know, so it was that different. You know, Orpheus, I used to go around with a tie and I wore a sport coat when we played. This, we were like, are we even here right now? And of course, there was probably a lot of marijuana being smoked on the way out to the gig. You know, back in those days.
I'm long gone down by the waterfall. It isn't that I hate the world, but the sun comes on like a super ball, like a big green pearl. Well, it shines, oh mama, come see. You've been rocking the cradle since time began. It's your master of time.
So how did the band break up?
Well, it disbanded because, okay, I'll tell you that story. You know, I'm doing this, you know, tales out of school, but I know what happened, so I can tell you. My friend and our tour manager, Burton Swan, a very good friend of mine, he decided he was going to stop being the tour manager and he was going to go to California and study with Ali Akbar Khan, the master sarod player, North Indian classical music, Ravi Shankar's brother-in-law. They play the same kind of music. And he was going to go there and learn to play that. And so that was a sad departing, and he went out there, and he was having a wonderful time. And he wrote me a letter, and he said, hey, listen, you should come out to California. People are waiting for you out here. And so I said, oh, well, no one's waiting for me here that I can see, so okay, I'll go out there and see the people waiting for me. So I packed up a VW bus. I went and bought a brand new one. I bought a brand new VW bus. I turned the inside into a little, I had mattress on the ceiling and all sorts of thing that looked like a little hippie place, I guess. And across the country, I drove and got to California. And when I got there, I went to where Burton Swan was playing in California, was living in California. By then, he had become the director of the college. He was like that. He could, you know, before long, he would own something there. So by the time I got there, he was the director of the college. And so it was wonderful, and I was invited to be their guest for the time of the vacation, which was about 6 weeks. And I had some wonderful experiences with Ali Akbar Khan, who loved my music, loved the dream. He asked me to play the dream for him. It was actually quite a startling thing for me. We were all sitting around. He was up on a little stage, and there were maybe 150 of us sitting around, and he was going to speak or play or whatever he was going to do. And so I'm sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden a guitar is handed to me. And they say, play for Khansab. So I go, oh my God. So I played the dream, and after it, everyone was quiet, and he said, play it again. So I played it again. And that was that. And then I was so overcome by the experience, because I didn't expect to be doing that, that I got up and I went outside, and I'm sort of standing outside going, man, that was close. And I turned around, and Ali Akbar Khan had followed me outside, and he told me, I'm always a guest in his home, and whenever, to just consider his home my home. So that was the beginning of a beautiful experience. And so what I thought was going to be a 6-week vacation in California turned out to be staying in California. I just went back and got some stuff. Then, telling everyone that I was going back to California, I remember we were all in my house in Barrie, and we were all sitting on the porch. It was a porch with a porch swing and everything. It was, a white house with a gazebo in the middle of the circle. Barrie, Massachusetts, a beautiful town. And so I'm telling everybody, I think we're all standing out on the front porch, and I said, I'm telling everybody, yes, so I'm going back to California. I'm gonna find a place to live out there. And everybody had this big sigh, because I guess to them it seemed like I had put this new band together around the 4th album, and now I was disbanding it. So why did I put it together if I was just going to disband it? Well, I had my reasons. And so I remember everyone standing and gloomily standing on my front porch, and I remember discussing it later with Elliot, and Elliot said, I had all I could do, not to either laugh or to cry about it, because that was it, and I really didn't go back. I've only gone back a couple of times to Worcester to see my parents and so on, my brother. But when I got out here, you guys, I dare you, come out and spend some time out here, and you go, what's winter? I don't want to have any winters anymore. I just want to have the day be the same every time I wake up. But I remember taking my life in my hands many times, sliding around the road, trying to drive home somewhere, and it really is an experience that you don't have out here. Plus, your cars don't rust.
Right.
The cars look great after 25, 30 years.
How many shows a year are you doing?
I'm pretty much at the sort of at the mercy of my fellow musicians. They, rather than my going out and like doing a show, a Bruce Arnold concert, generally what I do is I get asked to play with bands that are playing somewhere, and very often David Freiberg is playing around, and whenever he plays, he asks me to come. And we have a version of Can't Find the Time that we do together with he and his wife and the rest of their band. And we also have a version of Guantanamero, one of my favorite songs I've been fooling around with for a while. And they're on YouTube, as you know. So that I do that, and I played at the summer series in San Rafael, the summer music series. And I did a set of songs there. I played a couple of songs with David Freiberg, and then I did 4 or 5 songs by myself. And I'm not only writing new songs, but I'm also doing one thing that I like to do a lot, and that is that I rearrange somebody else's song. In fact, I'll play a song, one of the ones that I'm working on, which I really like. See if I got the lyrics here. I hope I don't smash everything. Get over there. This song was written in the 1920s, I think 1921. And it was written by James McAvoy. And it was originally called The Pot Smoker's Dream. However, they found that that was too provocative a title. So it was later released under the title, and after much lyric change, under the title of Why Don't You Do Right? And you may remember it from the Roger Rabbit movie. Jessica Rabbit sings this song. But it was originally made famous by Peggy Lee, who had heard it some 20 years before she became famous and bothered Benny Goodman over and over again until Benny agreed to let her sing this song. And that's where I heard it. And then I do my own version, updated a little bit. Sort of goes like this. She said you had plenty money back in 92 till you let some woman make a fool of you. Do right like some other men do. Get out of here, give me some money. Give me some money too. Well, you sit around wondering what it's all about, but you got no money, so they put you out. Why don't you do right like some other man do? She said, get out of here, give me some money, give me some money too. She said, I felt for you driving and I took you in. All you got to offer is a drink of gin. Why don't you do right like some other man do? She said, get out of here, give me some money, give me some money too. Get out of here, give me some money, give me some money, give me some money too. Yeah. Well, if you had prepared 20 years ago, you wouldn't be wandering from door to door. Why don't you do right like some other man do? She said, get out of here, give me some money, give me some money too. Go get some money. Go get some money. Go get some money.
All right.
Excellent,
That was
Bruce.
great. Thank you.
Very cool.
Thank you. You know, what I thought in relationship to that was that I thought about Darius from Hootie and the Blowfish saying, let's do this 50-year-old song. You know? I mean, back in the 50s, if you did a 50-year-old song, you know, it would be like something from the 1900s.
Yeah.
If you knew Susie like I knew Susie or something. But now you can go back 50 years or to certain songs and bring them forward, you know? And so I was really glad about that. It affirmed that it was real music. If you could play it 50 years later and it still sounded good, you know?
You recently put out a new CD, Orpheus Again?
Yeah. Over the years, you know, I continued to record. Maybe I mentioned to you that I have over 100 unreleased recordings. And so I've continued to make a whole bunch of songs that I liked and so on, and many were done quite, you know, with full production and so on. So I got to a point where one of my friends I was sending songs to every year or so. I'd send him a bunch of other songs, and one time he emailed me back and he said, well, now that's the 9th song you've sent me, 3 more, and you've got a CD. And I sat back and I said, geez, that's right. So I sat down and wrote 3 more songs right then, all at once. And those were, those are the songs, High Flying Bird, Cinnamon, and You Say. I wrote those all specifically for this new CD. And then I had been blessed by being invited to Skywalker Ranch. We knew, my wife knew the wife of the president of the company, and when he heard that I was producing, he said, well, would he like to produce out here at Skywalker? And so what do you think the answer to that was? And so I went out and we did 21 sessions over 8 weeks. And it consisted of doing new songs, remixing old songs, bringing tapes from back east out here to work on, to adapt. And finally I got done with 9 of them, where I was finished and completed with 9 of them. Very happy with it. And then I met, and then Skywalker is such a busy place that it's difficult to get. Like if you go in and you say, okay, I want it for these 3 weeks. I say, okay, and then say you want to say, oh well, there's one thing I forgot to do. I just go back in and fix that. I just need an hour in the studio. They'll go, okay, well that'll be next January. You know, it's like you're in now, but that's it. Don't expect to just float back in and out, because they got a business running there. So I had to find another place to do an album, the rest of the album songs, so it would have a continuity. And then one of my neighbors is David Freiberg from Quicksilver Messenger Service and the Jefferson Airplane. And he and I are friends, and he said to me, why don't you record those 3 songs at my studio? So I went up to his place and I recorded those other 3 songs, and then he and I mastered all 12 songs, and then I sent that whole thing to my brother, and he re-looked at everything, made some changes, and then I had the CD ready to sell. So I looked for a distributor like CD Baby will, you know, just sell what I want to sell and don't give me any trouble about it. And so that's how that came about. And I'm very pleased with that. I think I was pleased the way it came out. It was exactly what I wanted. So if you hear any mistakes, they're not really mistakes. That's what I wanted to do.
Here's Playground.
We'll have luncheon in New York, then fly to Maine and find a hideaway, or any time of year we can play along the Esplanade and hear the fine music from the shell. People sit for hours because it's played so well, and it pays to know and I will be there at table number 9. The Prince on Newbury suits me fine. Boston DJs seem able to read my mind. Take the new ferry to the vines. Let's go, let's stop, unwind.
That was Playground from the Orpheus Again CD, released in 2010. Here's It's Insane.
Sex is such a silly thing. Well, it sure do cheer me up. You're such a pretty thing. Well, I just can't get enough. Just can't get enough. Don't make promises, promises, promises that you can't keep. You make promises, yes you do. Make it so I can't sleep now. Yes, you're such a pretty thing, pretty thing. Such a pretty thing, pretty thing. Don't you tease me. Roll your eyes and go away. Don't you tease me. Roll your eyes and go away. It's insane. Well, I can't explain, but I like it. Yes, I like it. It's insane. Well, I can't explain. Yes, I like it. Yes, I like it. Well, in the middle of the night, it can sure get cold inside.
Hey, can't find the time to tell you, but I'm finding the time right now. All my friends from Worcester, Joey D and Walter Crockett, you know who you are. You the guys that, made my life fun back then. I know we were probably hanging around up at Joe Booty's, El Morocco, and all the things that were happening down on Main Street. Listen, I'm a Worcester boy, and that hasn't changed a bit. So, invite me back. I'll come back and see everybody.
Thanks again for being here, Bruce, on the Boston Beat. Here's Round and Round from the Orpheus Again CD.
You say you love me and then you don't. You say you're willing and then you won't. All this confusion has got to go. This indecision, this I don't know, I don't know. You go round and round, round and round. If you could be me and I were you, then you could see what it is you do. You're like a puzzle, a mystery. Why can't you let go and let it be, let it be? Round and round we go, round and round.
Thanks for listening to Rat Tales, Boston Rock Stories. Rat Tales is produced and directed by Lenny Scolletta and Mike Hoban, with a huge thanks to Medford Community Media in beautiful downtown Medford, Massachusetts.